We are live.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all on the behalf of BSc Bioincubator Bio-Incubator, Regional Center for Biotechnology. I'm Sudhanshu Sekhar. So today we are live with one of our startup founder, Mr. Syed S. Ahmed, who is a founder of the Tech Invention. So we are fortunate that we are celebrating 75th Independence Day, and to commemorate this year, we are actually motivating young startups, young entrepreneur to create a new division, new disruptive innovation in their field. And so that we welcome you all on the behalf of the BSc Bio-Incubator. And so before we going ahead, I just like to tell you one more important thing, that as the India is growing very fast, so the now Indian global economy, India is emerging as the third largest global economy, and uh, already we have achieved a unicorn value, a very good unicorn value. India has added more than 60 unicorn in the list of the startups, and biotech sector has contributed 70.2 billion uh, valuation as of 2020, and we are aiming for more than 100 billion valuation. So the total share for the bioeconomy is 2.7% of total GDP. So going ahead, I just like to tell you that on this behalf of 75th Independence Day celebration, Department of Biotechnology, Government of India has organized a program, Science Setu, and we are on the part of this. We actually have started startup series where lots of entrepreneurs from different backgrounds comes and share their startup journey. So going ahead with the global scenario, as already, if you go with the quotes of the entrepreneurs, so the Steve Jobs already said that the best thing and the great thing to do great work is to follow your passion. And all the entrepreneurs, all the young entrepreneurs who are very passionate to pursue the journey of the entrepreneurship are actually being motivated by the government of India. So now going ahead, I welcome Mr. Syed S. Ahmed on the board, who is a founder of Tech Invention. And I would just like to give a more detail about the Regional Center for Biotechnology and BSc Bio-Incubator. We are actually creating entrepreneurship awareness, like first, the aesthetically located in NCR Biotech Science Cluster, Faridabad. So we are the one of the largest bio-incubator in Delhi NCR and fastest growing center for the bio-incubation. So BBB is managed by Regional Center for Biotechnology, and we are established to foster innovation, research, and entrepreneurial activities in biotechnology related area. We are operational since November 2018, and we are managed by Regional Center for Biotechnology, which is an academic institution established by Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, with regional and global partnerships synergizing with the program of UNESCO as a Category 2 center. And RCB has been recognized as an institute of national importance by Parliament of India. The mission of the BB is to stimulate the establishment and growth of biotechnology-based startup companies, and BB is funded by BAREC and the Bionest scheme. So before going ahead, I would just like to tell you more about the characteristics of the entrepreneurs, which are the motivation, innovation, integrity, patience, and can-do attitude and risk-taking ability, which Mr. Syed S. Ahmed will already will discuss in detail about how a young entrepreneur should develop such attitude while pursuing the journey of entrepreneurship, while welcoming with the risk factors and the rewards factors of the entrepreneurship. So BSc Bio-Incubator actually motivates all the young entrepreneurs, all the young startups to pursue the journey of entrepreneurship. We provide the excellent incubation facilities like pool of mentors, lab space, office space, professional business tools, culture facility, advanced instrumentation facility, patent assistant, IP, and technical assistance. We actually have the shared incubation facility and independent lab for all the startups who need bigger lab spaces and office spaces. We also have the big office cubicles for them, and all the central instrumentation facility, culture facility, because once biotech startups is concerned, about the developing the in-house R&D facility, the cost is huge and which is not possible for the startups. So getting incubation with the help of the such kind of facility is really helpful for all the startups who are actually very new in the field and who don't have much resources. So unique features for how we support the bio entrepreneurs, like all the shared incubation facility, independent lab of space, professional business suite, culture facility, center instrumentation facility, meeting room seminars. So these are all the incubation facilities. Apart from that, there is regular monitoring, there is regular mentoring of the young startups, and as well as all the networking. So till now we have supported 35 young startups, and being located in the strategic location, the Delhi NCR, the startups can be easily get access to the all the government as well as the private bigger institutions, access to the pool of scientists from NSBC, that is NCR Biotech Science Cluster, technical support and assistance in funding, access to ATPC. So our sphere of activity at BBB is biopharmaceutical, medical device and diagnostics, life sciences, IT-based bioservices. So these are some of the startups which are with us. And if you have any disruptive, innovative idea, so you can reach to us, and these are our contact details. With this, I just like to end the introductory part. And I welcome Mr. Syed S. Ahmad on the board. And Syed S. Ahmad is a great entrepreneur. So he is a very young, I would say very young, because he's having a very innovative concept. So he is a founder and director and CEO of the Tech Invention Private Limited, which is a startup in the biotech field. And he is actually a pharmacy graduate from Government College of Pharmacy, Bangalore, with an MBA from ITM Bangalore. And prior to incepting Tech Invention, Mr. Syed has grown up to the rank of the pharma industries, being associated with Indians, multinational companies in the domain of strategy, business, projects, etc. And his last industry experience engagement as a vice president, international vaccine business and corporate strategy at Panacea Biotech Limited. Mr. Syed is currently on the board of Engineering Biopharma Manufacturing Network, and his passion statement being purpose of life is to lead a life of purpose. With this, I welcome Mr. Syed S. Ahmad, and welcome to the show, Syed ji. So we would just like to have a more detailed enlightenment about the journey of entrepreneurship, how you started and how you have grown up your startups from a very small, from being the solopreneur to becoming a large enterprise. Welcome.
Thanks a lot, Sudhanshu. At the outset, it is indeed an honor and a privilege to talk a little bit about our journey on the very auspicious and important occasion of 75 years of our independence. Sudhanshu did talk about we being a young startup. Yes, we are a young startup, but I don't think I qualify as a young entrepreneur. So, but because nowadays you see youngsters in their mid-20s, early 30s, doing extremely well and raising startups to the status of a unicorn. But nevertheless, I suppose we do have quite a bit of challenges to share, quite a bit of experiences to share with the cluster. And I'm indeed thankful to BSc Bionest leadership and the team for giving us this opportunity. More than talking about a generic aspect, I would like to share our personal story as in the form of a small case study and specifically highlight what's worked and what's not worked, more for other startups on what not to do and what to do, considering their ecosystem and their business dynamics and so on. So in the next about 15 minutes or so, 15 or rather 20 minutes or so, I will take you through a short presentation. Like Sudhanshu said, my career started in 1995. And when I'm talking of growth, the growth is not just in terms of financial growth. It is largely the overall exposure, the learning and so on. So it was a very smooth sail for me. within a span of about 15 years, rising from an executive to the status of a vice president for global business and corporate strategy. But then when I got into vaccines in the last stint of my career with Panacea Biotech, that was the time the whole concept started changing in my mind. And what exactly hit me was the earlier pandemic of 2009. In 2009, I was at the helm of the vaccine strategy at Panacea Biotech, and the pandemic hit. And it was an amazing company to work for. And there was a scramble for vaccines. And my main focus at that time was to establish a network in middle income countries, because as you are aware, low income countries have access to free supplies of vaccines from the UN healthcare agencies. It is largely the middle income countries that get affected, and the high income countries are, of course, quite self sufficient. The scenario is no different with the current pandemic that we're looking at. And when middle income countries started looking around for companies, organizations, enterprises to set up local vaccine manufacturing infrastructure, frankly, there were hardly any organizations which could provide an end-to-end bandwidth and which could provide end-to-end solutions in this specific domain. Although in the pharmaceutical side, there were quite few. And that's when the entrepreneurial bug bit me. So in 2012, I came out and I started a company with an investor and, so to say, a strategic partner who had large expertise in the engineering side in setting up plants. And we were supposed to set up a vaccine manufacturing facility as part of the entire proposition that we had worked on. For some reason, the vaccine facility did not come through. So there was a slide as far as my career was concerned. For about a year and a half, we didn't know what to do. The concept wasn't taking off, and that's when we re-evolved the business model. And we said, if we are not able to set up our own facility, why not we set up facilities for middle income countries? And that concept started working. And when it started working, it really clicked extremely well, beyond expectations. And you will find that the graph just rose. But when the graph started rising, that's when, along with the increase in learning, exposure, and earnings, we felt that there were a lot of internal challenges that started coming up, because our business model, the agreements, the contracts were all majorly revolving around setting up a facility in India for ourselves and not setting it up for outside of India. And the ideological differences started coming in. And to the extent, it went to a stage where we had to fall out. And when we fell out, the slide was very bad. In fact, it went, I've put this even below baseline because this was the time that was the most troubled time of my life. Not very long ago, as you will see, it was just in the year 2015, 2016. And this was the time when I was trying to set up and another concept. And an investor came in the form of a bailout package. And unfortunately, that also fell through very badly, which also put me behind by a couple of years. And this is one of the thoughts that I'm going to talk about, especially to young startups, on what to do and what not to do, because slides are for sure, peaks and troughs are for sure going to be a part of every entrepreneur's journey. And then we need to be cautious yet optimistic and aggressive while taking things ahead. And it is at this time when you need real well-wishers who will stand by you, who will guide by you, not so much financially, but also who will give you an appropriate guidance. You will need a very strong legal team to guide you through this process. But yes, what stood by me along with well-wishers and a good legal team was the overseas clients with whom we had a long-standing relationship and rapport. And we started putting things together. And ever since, we are back in the game. And from 2016 till now is the journey that what I will share. But before that, I would like to quickly talk about the lessons learned the hard way. It's very important for a startup or the young startup or the entrepreneurs, like the way investors do a thorough due diligence on you, you will have to do a proper due diligence on your strategic partners, not just from their financial prowess or financial acumen, but largely from the culture of that organization, the orientation with which the prime investor comes up with, what is his ideology, what is his value system. There has to be an absolute marriage. And remember, divorce is extremely painful. So this one, many a time when an investor comes our way and when we have an idea and he shows excitement and we show excitement, we see it as something that's come our way, a blessing in disguise, and we intend to succumb. We shouldn't do that. We should definitely get into a proper due diligence from all aspects and then sign on the dotted line. The second most important point is a comprehensive legal documentation. A comprehensive legal documentation encompassing the next 2 points that I've listed, which provides for a review of the way the business or the concept is going. Every year or every 2 years, you need to sit together, review, and you should be open to restructuring the business model. And your agreement and contract should provide for that, because the business dynamics are so different, are so rapid, that you start with something and it evolves into something else, and that's when the differences come up. Whereas if your legal documentation, contract, and your term sheets provide for this, it would pave the way to revisit and restructure so that there are no hiccups as you go about. And the third or the fourth point that I mentioned out there is plan and provide for super success. My slide started not because we didn't do well. My slide started because we did exceptionally well. And that's when the difference started. Who contributed to what was the original system, what is it not, and so on and so forth. So when you plan along with your investors, along with strategic partners, you need to also plan for super success. When it goes beyond expectations, then how would the whole model be worked upon, reworked upon, so on and so forth. With this in mind, we started putting things back in place, and we said this time, let's give it a solo shot without strategic partners. And the concept of tech invention evolved. And we said our focus would be to set up capacity building for vaccines in low middle income countries. And in August 2016, just a day after the Independence Day, is when our independence began. And we started off with a very small rented place. And then today, the office that you see on the left-hand side on the 10th floor at the Summit Business Bay is our own premise. So that's that talks a little bit of the journey that we have traversed. I have quite a bit more to share as we go about. So we worked on 3 models, and this is something that again I would like to talk about. Especially some of us from the audience are into the biotech space. Many of them are into the biotech space, and all of us are aware that we are working on novel products in the biotech space. The lead times are quite large, and there would be unforeseen challenges, hindrances, which would take timelines off track, which would take the financials off track. And that's when, again, there would be a scramble as to how do we put the business back on track. So in this context, my appeal would be to consider strategic and technical advisory services in your own domain, apart from the concept that you're trying to build to the extent possible, which will start some kind of a revenue line right from day one, or rather early inception stages. So some kind of a revenue line along with your main focus of the product or the concept being developed will keep your business steady. And this is what exactly has been working for us. So this was the first revenue stream that started in year 1 when we set up Tech Invention. Alongside with our global network in almost about 24 countries, we started working on taking vaccines from developing country manufacturers from India, from South Korea, Russia, China, and Thailand to these middle income countries where they had huge challenges taking on the big pharma, which involved a lot of challenges, which involved unconventional strategies to make it successful, because vaccines are amongst the most regulated category of the entire pharmaceutical sphere. And then this is the second area that we started working on. So the first vertical of strategic technical advisory started early revenues, and the second vertical gave us revenues from a midterm, from year 3 onwards, when the vaccine started getting registered, pre-qualified by our principals and so on. And using the revenues from 1 and 2, we started working on our own research and development projects. And that's when we started building our own IP. So this is a broad 3 vertical concept that we worked on, which enabled or which made it possible for us not to dilute early on, not to go on for any borrowings and so on. This may not be possible in all categories, but the fact that I'm trying to say is wherever possible, it does work. The first category got us some good strategic deals. We are on a advisory role for a government vaccine manufacturing project in Nigeria. We're doing some good work in the Philippines, in Malaysia, and so on and so forth. But then, yeah, this vertical is one of our star verticals, which start giving us revenues early on. And when we came to the second vertical, we started off with one company, Sinovac, and then every year we started adding about one or two companies. And if you see, most of these are amongst the who's who in vaccine manufacturing. And today we represent quite a few of them, over 20 plus LMICs. We have our own regulatory team, clinical research, IP, strategy, BD, and our objective is to secure long-term supply contracts for our principals using unconventional strategies. So this has worked, definitely worked for us. And of course, when it comes to R&D, we started with the bio-incubation concept. We are fortunate to have been selected in BSc Bionest early on. And today we are also incubated in BioRiddle. We work on three large categories, all around the recombinant space: vaccines, endolysins for antimicrobial resistance, and third is monoclonal antibodies for infectious diseases, but all having the main sphere of being recombinant domains. I would like to talk a little more about BSc Bionest, not because we're incubated or I've been speaking on this occasion, but the fact remains that the incubation at BSc Bionest has definitely played a part in our growth story and has been a major inflection point, to the extent that as recent as about 2 weeks ago, we had a global client and who had come down the leadership from Russia, and they were amazed with the kind of infrastructure, not just the infrastructure, but the professionalism with which the whole concept is being dealt with. As I speak, we are undergoing due diligence, technical due diligence from the client, which is going to be for almost about 45 days. And assuming it goes through, it would be another feather to our small cap that we are trying to wear. But yes, the fact remains that BSc Bionest has been a major inflection point in our growth story. We did work around quite a few concepts, and if time permits, I would like to talk about a couple of them. Quite a few of them are quite unconventional strategies that we worked on. But yes, whatever work started in 2017 on the R&D side, you will see that in the first table, quite a few patents have been filed all around 2021. When the peak of COVID, that's when we started filing all the work that was done. And using some of the revenues from the first two verticals, we acquired some of the patents that have been filed early on from group companies in the biotech space. So we're trying to build an IP portfolio. That's another advantage or contribution that we have from BSc Bionest on support in the IP space, especially when you're working on a deep tech domain. Another concept that is working for us, which I would like to appeal to most of startups working in the biotech space, is start projecting your work in global conferences and congresses. Not necessarily that the product should reach a certain stage of clinical trials or even closer to commercialization. Even early on, if you have a hit on POC, do put up a poster, do ask for a presentation. You will have to go through the rigmaroles. There would be a screening process. But I must confess that we have had some early successes. So almost in about 5 global congresses and symposiums, we have made our presentations through the form of posters and so on. And this definitely helps when it comes to clients' confidence. And I'm just showcasing one of them, but then there have been quite a few more. And this is something which young startups should work on. We also got into the publication space. We're trying to put up some articles in some very reputed journals, but more the repute, more the due diligence from the journal side. And it's been almost a year, and some of our articles have been shortlisted in the very, very prestigious Human Vaccines and Therapeutics. The final review is on from the editor's side. And if it goes through, it will again add to our credibility, which is again something that young startups should work on developing a publication strategy. All these don't cost too much of money, but then it would definitely add to credibility of the concept that you are building. Most important, and this is where I personally feel I have been blessed, is a competent and committed team. As we started growing, more people started coming on board. Many of these are on our full-time roles, most of them. Some are on a contractual basis, some on an advisory role. But the fact remains that we've been certified as a great place to work. For such of those startups and clients in the ecosystem listening to me, this matters a lot, especially in the international arena. If you have a service or a product, the fact that you have been certified as a great place to work matters a lot to the client. It gives him a lot of confidence. Apart from metrics like they do ask about what is your attrition rate and so on. But then this definitely adds to the credibility. And this doesn't cost much. This is for category of employees under 100. And if you and they have a very, very professional way of going about it, and a certification will definitely come in handy. This is something that I would like to appeal to my fellow startups in the system. Another aspect that is helping us is memberships of various global, local organizations. Again, here, being a startup, at least in India, we have the annual fee for startups, which is at my very, very subsidized price. There are organizations like FIO, Federation of Indian Exporters Organization, who conduct seminars, conferences, which are very, very practical and objective, solution providing, and the costs are as low as 500 rupees, 750 rupees per delegate. And if you were to put up a group, then it would further come down. IDMA, Pharmaxil, all these local organizations, which are in some way either governmental or government linked, do come in very handy in terms of learning and value addition to the team. The global organizations also do come in very handy for us, especially the Africa Vaccine Manufacturing Initiative, the Emerging Biopharma Manufacturing Network. These are the organizations which help us in getting some wings to fly, in making sure that we are able to communicate our concept to the right audience at an appropriate time. So this is something that startups should again get in. FICCI does a lot of programs when it comes to the Indian startups. And like I said, at subsidized prices, most of the startups can avail a good orientation program and solutions which they are to challenges that they are facing. The Innovation Council, for example, in Geneva, did shortlist us as amongst the 100 innovative SMEs worldwide. They did publish a story on us. They did publish a write-up from my interview. And that also came in handy, especially to a couple of clients when we talk about our proposition, our credibility. Very recently, although this is not a forum where I would like to brag, but yes, the SME Chamber of India, that's again where we could look at getting a membership. They have a complete ecosystem like the SME Export, the SME Investment, Startup Council of India, and so on. So gaining a membership to any of these would enable you access to all the other sub associations or organizations. And we are quite fortunate to have been nominated as the rising star in the category of SMEs and amongst the India SME Excellence Award for 2021. We are shortly awaiting the physical award function. And this definitely helps, would come in handy because their orientation programs, their conferences are across domain. They talk of challenges in IT, they talk of challenges in finance, banking, Forex, and so on and so forth. In addition to that, there are a lot of competitions that BIRAC comes up with, DBT comes up with, which you're all aware of. But there are also other awards that come up. And when we take part in those awards, it definitely adds to our profile. Being a startup, to build a story, it definitely does come in handy. Yeah, but yes, for us, the most valuable assets are the client reference letters. If there's anything that we flaunt as a startup, as a young growing startup, we do flaunt our client reference letters. Because in our domain, not only in our domain, in every domain, business leads to business, references lead to references. And this is something that we've worked on. And I'm sure it would work on for all the other startups. When everything seemed going well, all of us are badly affected by what happened. Nobody envisaged the extraordinary times that we went through with COVID. It did affect us badly, though. The ecosystem that we had spread across 20 countries for vaccine manufacturers, quite a few of them, went directly using government direct channels, and it did impact our revenues and so on. But in spite of this, we managed to keep the growths quite steady. The tough times did impact us, but yes, we have managed to keep the growth curves quite linear out here. And during this time, during the tough time, when we looked at what we are doing, we said when it comes to drug discovery or development, we are following in-house almost all the aspects with a lot of support from BSc Bionest. But yes, where we get stuck is when it comes to GMP batches. Now, in India, unfortunately, although there has been a lot of talk, and the recently concluded the Wiki Life Sciences Conclave, also the Ministry of Health and the DBT have talked about providing bioincubation for GMP-based facilities, which would come in very handy. This is something that we are also eagerly anticipating, because once you reach a stage of a proof of concept and you also get into a non-GLP preclinical, for companies in the biotech space, you need access to GMP batches for clinical trials. And when we reached out to some of the contract manufacturers, we got a shock of our lives, because for 3 consistency batches, it costed at least few crores, which we couldn't afford as a startup. And that's when we said, while we are doing rest of all the aspects in the entire value chain, these are the 2 threads that we need to address. So we are taking some courage in trying to get into the commercial space. And very soon, from 3 verticals, our plan is to get into 4 verticals of getting into indigenous commercial scale manufacturing. We looked at various states, we looked at various concepts, and again, for the benefit of the audience, would like to mention that at least we've found something very interesting in Haryana, with a biotech park with a lot of incentives coming our way, primarily for people working on R&D, deep tech startups. And I'm sure many other states are working on it. We need to take advantage. So we've just paid the EMD, and we are hoping for the e-bidding to happen during the coming week. And subsequent to which we plan to secure land for a commercial scale manufacturing facility, and then get going on setting up the project. Our aspiration is to look at One Health, not just human health, but also animal health, because most of the diseases are zoonotic, animal to human, human to animals, and so on. So to break the transmission, we do need to look at that. And while our journey so far has been quite exciting and challenging, but then we do have a very, very long way to go. The key takeaways would be, before I conclude, yes, trust is the most important factor. We all from India have a very high emotional quotient. So we do go by trust, and trust works much more than what the contracts and documentations do. But at the same time, along with trust, there has to be a huge degree of transparency, documentation, and so on as you go from startup to a scale-up stage. Very important to get into the intricacies. As recent as about a year ago, we had a huge loss on account of one of the bankers with the forwards that we had done, because we didn't get into intricacies. And of course, when you're getting into a marriage with an investor or a strategic partner, we have to do a proper due diligence. There are a few things that we have learned the hard way. And what has worked for us is, of course, a committed team, a customer delight, because when things went totally awry for us, it's the customers who stood by us. And of course, we should be open to a model that is constantly in evolution, and we should adapt. So this is our broad pathway for the future. It is very optimistic, very aggressive, but then that's the job of an entrepreneur, to see a dream and work with a proper team and ecosystem to make it happen. And that's a short story of ours. I would like to thank RCB BBB for all the opportunities that you have provided us in the biotech space, for the professionalism that's been displayed, and supporting us in taking an idea from which is on a very basic in silico model, at least to a preclinical stage. Thank you. Sudhanshu, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Sayed, for sharing your entrepreneurial journey. And I'm very sure that young entrepreneurs will definitely get a motivation that how to stay strong and how to build such startups in biotech sector. So I'm getting some of the questions from the audience that how did you manage to build a strong team? Because being a solopreneur then becoming to the one of the great place to work, and then also taking other people's in the on the board while being a startup. So how did you manage to build a strong team?
Yeah, uh, a couple of points. One is what I see is compared to what it was 10 years ago, youngsters and also some of them at the plush of their careers, middle stage of their careers. People are today willing to take risks. Gone are the days where people would look at security and stable growth, rather they would look at challenges and opportunities. I've What I've experienced is if you have a strong uh, uh, objective and purpose, a good vision and a mission. I'm sorry to use some generic terms. And if you're able to sell a dream and make them own it, I'm sure the passion is quite infectious. And what happens is when one or two good, committed and competent team members come on board, and then the rest we don't have to bother much, because then their references come in, they see what's happening, then from 2 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, and that's how the journey goes up. And when this happens, and when there's a little bit of noise that goes around, people do see a lot of merit in what we are talking about. And that's what has worked for us. At least we were quite fortunate to have some very committed professionals from the industry who took the risk of giving up plush jobs and coming on board to take the risks with us. And I think that worked for us. And thereafter, of course, forming a team hasn't been a challenge.
Yeah. So I really appreciate your point of view. So one question I'm also getting that what was the your motivation to continue your journey and not to quit during your struggling phase?
The thought of quitting did occur quite a few times. I must be very honest. Not just that, when the downslide started happening, the question was, how would you put your bricks back together? But there were also enticements from the industry. Okay, when some headhunter would call you and say, "Oh, I heard you're not doing well. Are you willing to get back to the industry? And here's a position for you." So while I was in that kind of a framework, one of my close friends, I did discuss with him, and I said, "Look, this is the kind of package that I'm getting, and this is the kind of facilities that I'm getting." And that whatever he spoke to me on phone for that 5 seconds is still deeply ingrained in my mind. He said, he calls me Syed Bhai, being a hardcore Gujarati. He said, "Syed Bhai, आप ये सोच लो कि आपको ये पैकेज लेना है या few years के बाद यही पैकेज देना है किसी और को." So I think that these are few, I would say, inflection points which get deeply ingrained, and then you say, "No, yeah, let's not. Let's keep the journey on." And family plays definitely a very, very important role. My wife was an absolute housewife. Today manages finance after the downslide. Today manages compliance. She got trained. She's going through a lot of workshops. She manages HR. So family support comes in very handy in such times. My daughter was one who told me not to quit, and my daughter was played a very instrumental role along with my wife to say that you should stay on course and do it solo. Okay, because again, although we split and it was bad, and even the bailout package did not work, that's the time when you are very, very vulnerable to succumb to another bailout package. So these things definitely do come in handy.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing a point of view. And one question I'm also getting that what is your suggestion to the young entrepreneurs who are looking for the seed funding and who want to increase their company valuation for the seed round?
See, today, I think for seed funding, there are a lot of opportunities very well under the government ecosystem, which you will have to use. The big scheme is a fantastic scheme, although We have not been fortunate to secure a big scheme, but then a big scheme grants you to a good amount of money, as much as 50 lakhs, and your TRL levels are quite low out there. And I was just reviewing the BIRAC site a couple of weeks ago, and I see that it's just been doled out like anybody's business all through the year after year. That's something which is very interesting. So in addition to those, I think there are quite a few startups and bio-incubation ecosystems. Like I think the Atal Innovation Mission has quite a few seed funds. The Tata's group, they have quite an interesting concept where they fund innovative ideas early on. So I think we should use this. The whole concept is creating awareness, which you are doing now. People are not aware that these opportunities exist. In fact, I was talking to a couple of, we had a reunion of Common College of Pharmacy about a week ago at Bangalore. And quite a few of my colleagues who are in the nutraceutical and agri-biotech business are struggling. And they haven't even registered their companies under startup. You have University of Agricultural Sciences, GKVK, CCamp in Bangalore. And if an agri-biotech is an area which they support extremely well. So I think if we create an awareness, I think that would help. That would help startups a lot.
Thank you so much. So now we have with us CEO of BBB, Ms. Suman Gupta. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Syed and Sudhanshu, for a very interesting session. It was, very enlightening to hear your story, Mr. Syed, and I'm sure most of the audience have learned that not to be afraid of failures and keep going, keep your focus right, and just keep working towards that. So we thank you once again for taking out time from your busy schedule and talking to our people on your success story. And we wish you all the best. We hope that you reach all the milestones that you've set for your company very soon and very efficiently. Thank you so
Thanks a
much.
lot. Thanks a lot. I appreciate the support that you've got at RCB.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, Mr. Syed, for coming with us and sharing your entrepreneurial journey. And I really hope that your entrepreneurial journey will definitely motivate young entrepreneurs and they will reach new heights. Thank you once again. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.